Long before Halloween became a night of costumes and candy, it was rooted in something darker, older, and far more sinister. It all began in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, a night when it was believed that the veil between the living and the dead grew thin, allowing spirits to roam freely. In a small, secluded Celtic village, nestled in a dense forest, people knew Samhain was not a night to be taken lightly. They spent weeks preparing, making offerings, and fortifying their homes against the wandering dead. Every family carved twisted faces into turnips to scare off evil spirits, leaving them by their doorsteps as a warning to the dead. They would light lanterns, hoping to keep dark forces from their homes. But not everyone heeded these traditions with the same devotion. The village healer, Moira, was both respected and feared. Known for her remedies and knowledge of ancient spells, Moira lived on the edge of the forest, where legends spoke of fae folk and darker, shadowed creatures. Some claimed she could summon spirits, or that she had a pact with the otherworldly. As Samhain approached, rumors began circulating, a chill that couldn't be shaken. Strange figures spotted at the edge of the forest, and cold, watchful eyes lurking just beyond sight. By the night of Samhain, an unnaturally thick mist blanketed the village, muting fires and dampening sound. The villagers took it as a sign that the dead were near, and they gathered, huddling together around Moira as she appeared in the town square, clutching a twisted, gnarled branch. Her voice was low, urgent. "This night is like no other," she warned. "The spirits have awakened. But there is one among them who is not content with wandering. An ancient one of wrath and vengeance, a spirit who is searching for something, or someone. This spirit has no mercy." As Moira spoke, the villagers felt a cold seep into their bones. She urged them to leave offerings outside their doors, food, coins, or even tokens of their most valued possessions, to appease the spirit and protect their homes. And she urged them to dress in costumes, to confuse and mislead the spirits, so they would pass by without harm. This was why their ancestors wore animal skins and masks, Moira reminded them, to blend into the night and avoid the gaze of the otherworldly. Most families rushed to obey, placing plates of food, coins, and trinkets at their doorsteps, donning rough masks, or covering their faces with smudged ash and mud. But a few villagers, dismissing Moira's warnings as mere superstition, scoffed and went to bed without offerings or costumes. They claimed the stories were old wives' tales meant to scare children, relics of an ancient time long gone. As midnight crept closer, a chilling silence fell over the village. The fires flickered low and shadows lengthened, taking on unnatural shapes. The villagers heard soft footsteps echoing through the streets, far too heavy to belong to any animal. It wasn't long before a figure appeared, slipping from shadow to shadow, a tall, twisted shape, almost human, but its limbs stretched unnaturally long, its face hidden in a dark hood. Its eyes glowed faintly from the depths of the shadow. The figure moved with a quiet, menacing purpose, stopping at each doorstep to inspect the offerings left by the fearful villagers. The fires seemed to dim in its presence, casting longer, darker shadows. Every villager who dared peek through their windows swore that for a split second, they locked eyes with a pair of hollow, soulless eyes that seemed to pierce straight into their hearts. It was when the figure reached the house of those who had ignored Moira's warnings that the silence was broken. The door creaked open, though no one had touched it. The villagers held their breath, listening, but there was no scream, only an unnatural stillness. By dawn, the family was gone. Every trace of them vanished as if they had never been there at all. The next morning, the villagers gathered, terrified, but alive. Moira's warnings echoed in their minds. From that day forward, every Samhain, they left offerings by their doors, wore disguises, and hung lanterns to protect themselves from whatever roamed their streets that night. And over time, the festival of Samhain evolved, and so did its traditions. Turnips became pumpkins, and costumes became an annual ritual. But the reason behind it all was forgotten, reduced to tales whispered by elders on Halloween night. Yet, Every Halloween, people still carve jack-o'-lanterns, wear masks, and place candy outside, unaware of the ancient tradition's purpose: to protect themselves from the spirit Moira had warned them about, an ancient evil that still wanders, searching on this night for those who dare to disrespect it. And perhaps, one Halloween night, if someone is reckless enough, it might just come looking for them. They always said that Willow Lane had a story of its own, but it was one I never quite believed. Every Halloween, people in our town would whisper about the old, abandoned house at the end of the lane, a place where no one dared to go. They said the house was cursed, haunted by the spirit of a young woman who vanished one Halloween night over 100 years ago. One Halloween, my friends and I decided to test our courage. We were supposed to be too old for trick-or-treating, but young enough to still crave a Halloween thrill. So we made a pact. We'd sneak out at midnight and spend exactly 1 hour in the house on Willow Lane. When the time came, the night was dark, with only a pale sliver of a moon and the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the house. It was drizzling, the raindrops tapping against the leaves and muddying the ground beneath us. My heart pounded as we approached, flashlights barely piercing the thick mist clinging to the ground. The house stood as a dark, looming silhouette, its windows like hollow eyes staring back at us, daring us to come closer. The old iron gate creaked as we pushed it open, and the sound echoed in the silence. We hesitated at the entrance, exchanging nervous glances, before finally stepping inside. The house was colder than the night outside, and the smell of mildew and rot hung thick in the air. Shadows seemed to dance along the walls, moving with each flash of lightning outside. As we made our way to the living room, we found strange symbols drawn on the walls, smeared in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. We tried to laugh it off, but unease settled over us. My friend Ben nudged me and pointed to an old, dusty photograph hanging on the wall. It was a picture of a young woman with hauntingly hollow eyes, dressed in clothes from another era. Her expression was blank, and yet it felt like she was looking right at us. "That's the girl," Ben whispered, "the one who went missing." I forced a smile, trying to shake off the fear creeping up my spine. "It's just a picture," I said, but my voice wavered. We continued exploring, peeking into rooms filled with cobwebs and broken furniture. But then, we heard it, a faint humming, like a lullaby coming from upstairs. "Who would even?" my friend Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. But our curiosity got the better of us, and one by one, we crept up the creaky, winding staircase, each step groaning under our weight. The humming grew louder as we reached the second floor. It was an eerie, melodic tune, each note sinking deeper into our bones. We followed the sound to a closed door at the end of the hallway. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob, and I glanced back at my friends, who nodded, their faces pale. I pushed the door open, and the humming stopped. The room was empty, except for an old rocking chair facing the window, swaying gently back and forth, as if someone had just been sitting there. In the corner of the room, I noticed a small, dusty music box lying open, its mechanism turning slowly before finally stopping with a chilling click. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us. We spun around, our flashlights flickering, and I felt a chill sweep through the room. The air grew thick, almost suffocating. And then, we heard it, a soft whisper, echoing around us. "Leave, before it's too late." We backed up, trying to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Just then, a shadow appeared in the corner of the room, dark and tall, with an unsettlingly familiar shape. My heart raced as I realized it was the woman from the photograph. Her hollow eyes seemed to bore into us, her face twisted in an expression of sorrow and rage. "Why did you come?" Her voice was like the wind, soft and cold, but filled with pain. None of us could speak. We were frozen, paralyzed by fear. She took a step forward, reaching out a hand that seemed to stretch, dark and shadowy, reaching out for us. We screamed, pounding on the door until finally, It flew open. We stumbled out, sprinting down the hallway and tumbling down the stairs in our rush to escape. As we burst through the front door and out into the cold, rainy night, we didn't stop running until we were far from Willow Lane, the house fading into the darkness behind us. Later that night, as I lay in bed, still trembling, I remembered the music box. In my panic, I had grabbed it without thinking, and now it sat on my nightstand. I reached over, curious, and turned the small key on its side. It began to play the same haunting tune we'd heard in the house. Then, I noticed something even stranger. Next to the music box was a photograph, one that hadn't been there before. It was an old picture of that same young woman. Only this time, I was standing beside her, frozen in the frame, her hollow eyes staring straight into mine. From that day on, every Halloween, I hear the tune again. And each time, it seems to grow louder, closer, as if the woman from Willow Lane still isn't finished with me.